A funny taste in music with Andrew Bird.
Hello, it's a funny taste in music. Here it is again. I don't know what you're doing. What you doing while you're listening to this? You pop this on, driving. You got a journey that's about an hour. You thought this should do it. Perfect. The gym. One of them people that listens to your own music at the gym, even though there's music playing. I judge you, just so you know. So anyway, wherever you listen to it, thanks for listening to it. Appreciate it. I hope you're enjoying it. It's been good fun doing it. This one, Jeff Innocent. Now, Jeff Blummin' Innocent. Firstly, I should say, he had a bit of trouble with his PC. Now, he had to do it down the phone, so there might be a couple of bits where it doesn't sound perfect. But he's in his 60s, all right? He couldn't get his PC working. There was some sound issue with it. It sounded like someone was hoovering in the background. So he's had to do it down his phone. If you've got a problem with that, email him directly and look forward to the response, right? He's in his 60s. Give the man a break, okay? Now, Jeff Innocent, I wanted to get him on this because mainly I did a gig with him in Jersey, and he likes a verbal spar, does Jeff? Let's put it like that. He's a fan of an opinion. So I remember him getting annoyed with me and the other comedian that we were being too nice and we weren't arguing with him. So he said to me at one point, "What music do you like?" I said Oasis, and he kept slagging off Oasis to try and provoke me into an argument. So I remembered that. I thought, I've got to get him on. He also noticed on the flight that I had a fear of flying, and he constantly, anytime there was any kind of bump, he'd go, "Now, I fly all the time. There's something definitely not right here." So that's who we're dealing with. I thought, we've got to get him on. He was brilliant. He knows loads. And I knew Google him. If you're going to listen to the episode, Google him as well and have a look so you know the image of what he looks like. He's a big man, big bald man. He, on stage, says how he gets mistaken as a bouncer. He looks like a proper East End Cockney geezer. And that's his kind of, his image on stage. And it's funny to think of him like that. And, he was into reggae, he was into jazz, as he'll tell you about coming up. Now, with this episode as well, there's Spotify. There'll be the playlist, so you can listen to any of the tracks that are mentioned or albums. He'll pick something from an album that's mentioned, and there'll be a lot. Also, I should mention from last episode with Al Pitcher, we mentioned Liam Gallagher's new song, and I wasn't that much of a fan of it. On reflection, I've now listened to it again a few times, and I watched the footage of him singing it on the boat on the river on the Thames, and I now love it. So for a split second there, I wasn't that keen on a Liam Gallagher song, and corrected it. Love it. Predictably, love it. So get the Spotify playlist, have a listen to the songs that go with this, and should say as well, the intro music on this song, speaking of rivers, the intro music on this podcast is called Down by the River. It's John Allen. You can see in the information. John Allen is a mate of mine from when I worked in a pub in South London. He was a musician that played covers in the corner, and he had his own songs, and we used to shout at him to play his own songs. Became friends with him. He released his album, and when I was getting married, me and my wife said, "Oh, it'd be brilliant if John played at our wedding." Bear in mind, we were getting married in Slovakia, and we were chatting to him, and he offered. He said, "I'd love to play at your wedding if you want me to. Come over and played at our wedding." So he's a brilliant musician. He's been on Jules Holland's on Radio 2 a lot. Great albums. It's called John Allen, JONALLEN. John Allen. This is called Down by the River, the song at the start and end of the podcast. So go and get more of his albums. Go and buy his albums as a thank you for him giving me that bit of music for free. So here comes that was a long intro. I apologise. Probably finish your car journey now. So here it comes. Here comes Jeff Innocent.
A funny taste in music. The interview next.
So I think I need to know when you're going to start recording.
I could do some sort of professional counting or something.
No, I'll do it. Here we go. Let the podcast commence. Let's podcast. Here it is. Here we go. So you're up late last night listening to music and drinking.
This is early. I want the audience to know that this is 10 a.m. and on a Monday morning, and I don't think comedians biologically are at their best at those times, and particularly because I was up late last night. Somebody gave me a bottle of Jack Daniels as a present, and it was sitting there. I thought, "Oh, go and have a little one," and then that led to the next one, and then I started putting music on, which is what I normally do. So, in a sense, all of that getting drunk and having a hangover now was all part of my, like you say, prep for this project. So that's commitment on my behalf, isn't it? Forcing myself to get drunk and put on music.
I thank you for it.
God bless you, Andrew Bird. God bless you.
I'm grateful for it. That's what my dad used to do. I used to walk in the house, and my dad would have a 2-litre bottle of cider and Bob Dylan on the headphones, and I used to creep past him because I thought, if he notices me, this is going to be a conversation.
Hold on. Sorry, my printer has started going off. I hope that sound doesn't interfere with this interview. This is the problem with doing things at home, isn't it? The dog will walk in a moment and start nudging me, wondering who I'm talking to, because when you're on the phone, dogs don't understand that there's somebody at the other end.
Like a nightmare for you.
They think you're talking to you. So it's okay. Someone's just come in to get their stuff off the printer.
Yeah, you've got hangover. The printer's going.
I know.
The dog's nudging you. It's 10 a.m. You're not at your prime at the moment.
No, it's okay. I'm hardcore. I can do this.
You're gonna plow on.
But let's go back to your dad. Sorry, that printer just put me off. So you had a dad that listened to Bob Dylan. How young are you? In fact, I've never. I'm a little bit young. I'm not saying I don't listen to Dylan or haven't got Dylan, but I'm a little bit young to have been around the original Dylan, the '60s Dylan. Was your dad a bit of a hippie, a bit of a guy like that?
Well, I was lucky. My dad was into, when I think of it now, he was into some really good music and then some shockers, obviously. But mainly he listened to Bob Dylan. When he was drunk, it was Bob Dylan, so I knew he was pretty drunk, and the Rolling Stones. So that was good.
That is true, though. Sometimes you can gauge people's level of drunkenness by their choice of music. You think, he's on the Rolling Stones. He must be really pissed now.
Blood on the tracks. He's getting angry and reflective.
Well, we had. I'm just trying to think. Obviously, I think drunkenness and music do go together, and my parents would have evenings with people round and play music, and I grew up in a very musical household. Not that people were musicians as such, but we always had records. There was always music playing. There was always sessions going on a Saturday night. There'd be people downstairs. They'd be playing records. But remarkably, and the timing of this interview, last week or a few days ago, even less than last week, if you like, I've got loads of records, by the way, and I found a box of records, a little container, and I opened it. It's all full of dust and... I felt like Howard Carter going into Tutankhamun's tomb. I thought, whoa, and it contains all the records, all the singles at least, that were in my house when I was young. I don't even know how they're in my possession, how they got there, why they got there. I don't think my mum's still alive. She's in her 80s, but I don't think she has a record deck now. She's got, she knows about YouTube and downloads and stuff. So I probably swagged those singles at some time and forgot about them. And it's almost like they chart the 60s. They were all the records I remember growing up with. And it's almost like if you look at this pile of records, well, there's hundreds, in fact, a couple of hundred.
Hundreds?
Yeah. There's a couple of hundred records there, and they chart, and I can remember. And what we've got is it's almost like like geologists and archaeologists when they're aging or something, they use rock stratification, don't they, to stay. It's a bit like these records are a bit like that. So there's sort of early 60s records, which that's very much part of my mum's thing, and that would be, Helen Shapiro and Engelbert Humperdinck and Del Shannon. There was a American early 60s American bubblegum pop like Bobby V and Del Shannon. And so there was a lot of that sort of stuff. And then you see it change, because I also had a load of uncles and aunts, her brothers and sisters, that were teenagers. She came from a family of 10 children. So their influences in these records, and I can see how the music changes, and now you start getting Manfred Mann and beat music coming in.
You could see like your mum growing up and changing.
Well, no, but what
families.
happened? Well, remarkably, my mum never embraced the 60s. She stayed at that Engelbert, Tom Jones, early 60s thing.
Right.
She never, it's almost as if the actual swinging 60s never penetrated her life, even though my uncles and aunts were coming round with all, they were like 60s teenagers coming around. So a lot of those records are theirs. And I remember them being there. I remember playing them at home. And, oh no, my mum never embraced the 60s as such, because I remember her watching TV and Mick Jagger was on, and I don't know who else he was speaking with, but I remember her being disgusted just at the pure sight of them. And in '66, she was only, I don't know, 35 or something. Oh, no, hold on. In '66, I was 10. She was 30. So she just somehow missed out the '60s. It didn't affect her in any other way.
How unlucky.
I didn't miss out on it, of course, because it's all going on in the house. So really, I would say, from as far back as I remember, there's always been records, music, songs going on in my family home. And remarkably, here I am sitting on those records now. It's an incredible thing. So we had that all the time, popular music going on all the time. And of course, there was also the radio in the 60s, so as a child, you're getting music through osmosis, if you like, the radio in the background. So I had a total pop education through having uncles and aunts, etc. But I also had this other musical history going on, running concurrently, in that my family were very big on pub singing. Now,
really?
Yeah. Now, pub singing in so I don't know if you ever did this, where you get to, you're a teenager, you're a young teenager, but you start going to pubs with your mum and dad on the Saturday night, maybe with your girlfriend, before you're totally going out with your mates. I had a bit of time like that where you look old enough, you go down in the family, and there'd be a band on, and like a proper band, proper musicians, and people would get up and sing. And that was the thing that was very much part of my childhood as well. And pub singing, I think it gets a bit derided now, doesn't it? But pub singing was taken very seriously, and people were very good singers. And also, I remember my granddad, who used to come and stay over at weekends, and so we'd all go down to the local pub, and he was a big pub singer, and he even had a theme tune that when he walked in the pub, if the band were on and no one else was singing, they were just playing music, they would play a few bars from the song that he was known to sing in the pub. How remarkable.
As he walked in?
As he walked in.
He had their entrance music. What, hang on.
Well,
would they play it in the middle of somebody else's song?
No, not while someone else was singing.
That'd be good.
When you just have a band on a lot of the time, just playing hits in a pub or classics, and that would happen. And I don't know how I can remember. It's this song called "Shepherd of the Hills," and it's from the 1920s, because my granddad he's Dickensian, so he's that generation of people, pub singers, are singing songs that were big hits in the 1920s, pre-war songs. Or big classic songs like Sammy Khan and people, those sort of songwriters. So he had this song, and it's I can only remember one line. It was called "Shepherd of the Hill," and it goes like this: "Shepherd of the hill, I hear you calling." That was the opening line, and they would play that melody as we walked in the pub, like his little entry tune, and that's class, isn't it? That is class. So what I'm saying is, I had that whole pop childhood that I was exposed to, and I also had this much earlier musical education of songs that they would sing in pub songs, and it would be a whole genre of particularly country and western. So you'd have people would sing Patsy Cline songs or Jim Reeves songs, and then you'd have all the crooners songs like Bing Crosby, Perry Como, all those sort of people. So, and Frank Sinatra. So I was well educated in all of that, but in my early teens, really. And I don't know what age people become musically aware, but I think probably about 10. I think about 10 you start.
You reckon about 10? I was going to say
earlier.
No, later. I'd say probably about 12, 13.
Well, I think 12, 13
10.
is when you're becoming independent. Also, maybe
start
financially,
buying it yourself.
You've got a Saturday job and you're buying tunes. But
yeah.
I think making somehow making cultural decisions about what something sounds like and if you like it or not. I do think 10 actually.
About 10. So when you were 10, then
well,
when you were 10, you said 66.
Yeah, so it's 66. So what? And I've got all of these aunts and uncles bringing in 7-inch records, putting them on the radiogram in the house. They were probably dancing in that 60s way with roll necks and slacks, right? Well, we certainly had one of those record players on the floor where when you see pictures of teenagers playing records, they're always lying on the floor on their elbow.
Yeah.
With one of these little record players where they flip down, don't they? We certainly had one of those record players that smelt a bit plasticky after they'd been on for a while as well.
Oh, right. I've never smelt that.
Yeah, well, this is very early, probably, mid '66. We're talking about. I don't even know if it was the state of the art technology then. And we had a radiogram as well. Those ones where you have it looks like a bit of furniture.
The big bulky things. Yeah.
Yeah, and they have a really good bass sound as well. They have a really good heavy type sound, but certainly, so that was lots of music in my childhood, actually. But in terms of making decisions, I reckon that's a bit older. In terms of buying records, probably 14 or something, isn't it? 14, 15.
Yeah.
It's probably when you start, being independent. And sometimes you're discovering new music that's actually totally at odds with your parents' music, and sometimes that's the fun of it as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Although for you, I mean, it sounds like they had a fairly good taste in music.
Well, I think so. Yeah, I think they did. Yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't have that when I was younger. We didn't have many house parties. I didn't have my mum and dad. The music played in my house was when my dad was really drunk or my mum was cleaning. Those were the only two times music was really played.
I don't think they're alone in that. I think that happens quite a lot with people. Housework is people put music on, and when people get drunk, they do. Yeah, that's very funny though.
Yeah, I remember watching the Johnny Cash film Walk the Line. Right.
Okay.
And I knew the main Johnny Cash songs, like everyone does. But after a while in the film, I was thinking, how do I know every line to every song of this? Mm-hmm. And I just happened to be talking to my mum about it, and she said, well, probably because I played Johnny Cash every Sunday cleaning the house for 3 hours. It's sunk in.
I think that's exactly what I'm talking about. That osmosis thing of growing up with music going on, and you're not particularly conscious of it, but you are after the fact. You think, oh, yeah, I know that.
You had it even more when music was probably more important then, because there was less telly.
Sure.
So music was more important, and the house parties with all your aunties and uncles. Brilliant.
Yeah, that is great. Yeah.
So at 10, were you aware of like the Beatles then? Because that would have been 66.
Well, yeah, I was actually. I think I wasn't as aware of the bit when I look back now on the so-called 60s. Certainly that mid to late 60s beat boom, as they call it. I think I was more, on reflection, I was more aware of, say, Motown or Bacharach and David songs.
Right.
Yeah, than the Beatles. Obviously, I remember them, but I don't remember them properly until maybe the later 60s when I was a bit older. But certainly I remember Tamla Motown. I mean, I remember Tamla Motown, every song. That was a massive thing. And we've got a few of those records in the pile, in the find. There's some Supreme.
I was going to say,
yeah.
What are you going to refer to that record collection?
I don't know.
It's got to be the find. What else is in the find?
There's a lot of Tamla Motown in there, and of course, Tamla Motown was just big on the radio, wasn't it, as well? So it's just going on. It's going on in your childhood. You're not necessarily conscious all the time of taking it on, but then when you remember it or when tunes come on. I remember, and I think probably Burt Bacharach and Hal David songs sung by Dionne Warwick and whoever, and Tamla Motown, I remember more than the Beatles, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
that's the thing they kind of say about the Beatles, about the whole swinging 60s thing, that they go that, yeah, but the swinging 60s where they're all flower power and all stuff like that, that wasn't like the whole of London. That was a tiny proportion of like Carnaby Street. Not everyone in East London who was skint.
No.
Was all dressed like hippies.
No, you're right. They weren't, people weren't walking around, driving around in minis with Union Jacks on and with Beatles moustaches, George Harrison moustaches and cavalry coats. Obviously, it was a smaller section. It was a younger section of people. That whole flower power thing. In fact, the hippie thing, in a way, comes later, I think. Where it, certainly in my life, that with rock music or the legacy of the 60s, it comes out in the early 70s with rock music and singer-songwriters like Cat Stevens and still Dylan, of course, and Joni Mitchell. I think that's so now. That would be. I mean, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here chronologically, but as soon as you brought up that flower power thing, I think my connection to that would have been when I was about 16 and started working as a Saturday job in a fashion boutique, where they have,
Tell me about this.
Well, funnily enough, it was Mr. Byrights, who I don't know if you ever remember them, but Mr. Byrights.
I do. I used to get Mr. Byrights.
No way. No.
Yeah, I remember that when I was a teenager.
Well, Mr. Byrights, when they first came out, they were originally a stall in Angel Lane Market in Stratford, the governor, Lou Levy, and it was during the Skinhead period, 69, and they were selling Ben Shermans and Levi's off the back of a lorry, like literally off the back of a lorry, and then they got a shop and they built up. So by the time it's, how old am I, 15, or it's 1971 or wherever, I'm working, I get a Saturday job in Mr. Byrights in East Ham, and it was still quite a trendy shop. And I'll tell you what they were selling. I can remember specifically suede budgie jackets. Do you know what they are? From the TV program that Adam Faith was in, and satin loon pants and satin jackets and tartan scarves. That early Rod Stewart look, spiky hair, satin, pink, red, all of that. So that was so because they were very trendy then. It was all LPs. They'd bring in LPs. So you're all day listening to LPs and being introduced to LP music, if you like, which was something, that became a thing, didn't it? LPs, really, which hadn't been before. It'd been singles mostly.
Yeah, for you, especially I imagine at house parties with a record player and constant singles, and now suddenly...
and everyone's a bit older than me, and they're all, listening to sophisticated music. So now I'm coming into contact with all of that stuff as well. So at quite an early age.
Now you're about 15, working in a shop, about 15, 16. That's when you're starting to choose your own music then. So what?
Well, I think so. And then you've got money as well to make decisions. But I think the first time I'm making a big decision musically was when I'm a bit younger, actually, maybe in 68, 69, certainly in 68, 69, where I got in on the skinhead youth subculture. I was very much part of that, wore all the stuff, the haircut, in a gang, and became introduced to reggae, which I had heard before because when I was very young, I grew up in Camberwell and Peckham, and there would be reggae music playing, and you didn't really know what it was, but it would be there, and it was somehow in your memory. Yeah. It's there, ska particularly. But during 69, there was one LP that everyone was buying. You get that every now and again, and it was called Tighten Up Volume 2. I think it came out in 69, and it was a compilation of a load of brand new reggae songs, brand new Jamaican music. And it was only now just becoming reggae. It had been different things before, so the whole thing was becoming defined now, and it was, and it's still my favourite compilation LP. It's still, I think, so fantastic. But it was an LP that introduced a lot of young white working class blokes and women, of course, to Jamaican music, which they totally embraced. And our gang used to meet up in this cafe called the Flamingo in Manor Park opposite the Rusking Arms, where the Small Faces started, funnily enough.
Right.
And we had a jukebox, and it was full of those songs. And that started a love affair, and maybe even an obsession, an on and off obsession that has lasted to this very day and is current. My love of reggae, that was a thing that I had running concurrently with all the other stuff. That was my own personal interest.
Constant.
Yeah. So that's been a constant throughout. That's,
So,
sorry. Go
can
on.
you, because, like, can you sort of explain more about how, young white kids got into reggae? Because you think, and skinheads, because people, when you say skinhead, it's got, a bad reputation.
Well, yeah,
now,
I mean,
hasn't
there
it?
is the association, certainly with the first generation of original skinheads, with racism and anti-immigration, and packy bashing was the term. But that's not necessarily accurate about the whole thing. What was going on was, and I didn't realise this at the time, but subsequently, I've been to university, I've done cultural studies, I'm into cultural history. What was going on is the young working class, it was mostly blokish, were identifying with the rebelliousness of this music as well. And it was a music that wasn't part of their parental culture. So it was something that was theirs, it was militant, you could dance to it. And also it was a lot of it was about rude boys, this concept, rude boys, hooligans, youth hooligans, which was very much part of Jamaican culture then. And so I think teenagers were just identifying with that as well. And the mod thing had gone on before, so it wasn't as if it was a brand new thing. Mods were embracing Jamaican music with ska. So a lot of skinheads, their older brothers, would have been mods. So there would have been some sort of Jamaican music in their personal history. And I just fell in love with it. And I remember Tighten Up Volume 2 wasn't the first LP I ever bought. The first LP I ever bought was The Upsetter Again. And this is Lee Perry, his house band, they're called The Upsetters. And I remember going to buy it, and that would have been 69 or 70. I think it came out in 69. And I remember buying it. I remember going to Rumbelows, the electrical shop in East Ham High Street, and buying it, because that's where you used to buy reggae records in like Curry's.
In an electrical shop?
Yeah,
like
electrical shops sold records. And did
they?
Yeah, they did. I mean, before independent record shops, which did come along in the 60s as part of the whole youth market, youth culture boom. But before that, you bought records, say, in Woolworths or W.H. Smith's or the Co-op, but also electrical shops. They sold records. And that's where you used to get reggae, anyway.
So you go and get your Hoover Bags extension lead.
I know.
The race, like,
and it's
reggae.
So funny. And I'm sorry, I mean, in the late 70s, when I was really on the reggae scene then, and I used to be a DJ on sound systems and go and play parties, and it was everything in my life at that time. And somebody tipped me off that there was a record shop in Bristol still selling old reggae records, and people were going down there, collectors, and picking up all these tunes that they didn't have. And I remember going down on the train, I think I had 170 quid. I don't know, I can remember the amount, but it seemed like a huge amount then. And the shop was in Picton Street in Montpellier, Bristol, right? And all it was a little electrical shop where they fixed Hoovers and washing machines. I know. And the guy behind the desk had one of those brown coats on that they wear in shops where you buy paraffin, like hardware shops and that.
Yeah.
And
in comedy sketches as well.
Yeah, I know. In the two Ronnie's comedy sketches.
Yeah.
And it was like you were transported back to the 69. He had records there, Jamaican records on British labels, and he was selling them as he would have done in 1969. It was quite remarkable. I went there and said, "Have you got this?" And he just went over and picked it out as if it had only come in this week. It was a time travel experience. It was absolutely remarkable. It was just incredible,
like a gold mine of reggae.
It was, yeah. And I obviously should have had £1,000, but wasn't really a collector. I'm not really a collector as such. More of a DJ than a collector. So I've built up a collection, but I'm not. I've been around people who collect reggae music, and some of them they're about matrix numbers and serial numbers, and I'm not really. I mean, I love Lee Perry. He's probably the first person that I became obsessed with and followed. And I, would try and have as much of his stuff as I can, up to 78, where he went a bit bonkers and ceased to become relevant musically. But I would try and have everything I could find. Anything I would find up to then with Lee Perry, I would buy. But I'm not concerned about serial numbers exactly. But there's still an obsession, because when you're a DJ, see that's the other thing. So I get into reggae in '69, say, or whatever, and but I'm also going to work, so I'm still getting Cat Stevens and Joni Mitchell.
Yeah.
So I've got those.
Were you into that as well?
Well, yeah, and also I've got this other musical influence, which I reminded myself of only yesterday for this conversation. Is that when I was 18, I left home, and that's quite early, I think, 18, with my girlfriend, and we lived in different bedsits. And when you're living in a shared house, you're living with older people. And these were people that wouldn't necessarily come from my background. I remember a lot of people, say, from up north or Scottish, who are now down here teaching or at university. So I'm coming into contact with people that are a little bit older than me from a different background. So now I'm being introduced to different music now, like Weather Report and Traffic and, jazz, rock and Steely Dan. There's a good example of the type of band.
Yeah.
So what you might, where you just say, wow, there's all of this going on as well. So, but my reggae thing then really up until maybe the mid-70s, where I start going out to dance halls and sound systems and parties where I'm coming into contact with people that are also listening to that music. Up until then was pretty much my private interest, if you know.
Yeah. So
but I think that thing of being with older people, they turning you on to music, people don't do that anymore. You don't go around to people's houses like you used to, and they go, hey, I've got this, you've got to listen to this, and you sit down, build a little joint on the LP cover, and they're turning you on to music you haven't heard before.
You share a link on Spotify.
I miss that. Yeah, it is that. And of course, in many ways, you can share much more by doing that online, but you don't have that experience of being with people, experiencing it at the same time, talking about it. And I miss those sessions. They're very much part of getting turned on to new music.
Because you remember the people who sat you down and said,
"You really do, don't you?"
I still can really clearly remember the day. My mate, this is a different thing. My mate went, Ollie Pritchett. He goes, right, you listen to the Stone Roses yet? And I was too head in the sand with Oasis to consider any other bands.
Were they rivals then?
No, Stone Roses were just before Oasis, kind of. And my mate went, he said, hang on. He went out to his brother's car, got the CD, put it on. We just sat round the stereo staring at it.
Yeah.
They just stared at me, staring at the stereo, like, huh? You don't get that. And I still, every time I hear I Want to Be Adored, I can still see their faces staring at me. Like,
there you go. That remembering when you first heard a tune is so great, isn't it? It's so fantastic.
So this was East London, where you were sort of now in bed sits and sharing.
Yes, I was. Yeah,
older people.
Yes.
Whereabouts in East London?
Manor Park.
Right, and then.
So when I left home, my first flat was in Manor Park, and even my second one was in Manor Park as well. And now I'm hanging around with slightly older people. And reggae now is becoming a bit of a crossover thing in the early mid 70s. Sort of those sort of people because of John Peel. The John Peel radio show was probably the only radio program that was playing reggae.
Right.
In fact, there were no pirates in those days. There was no reggae record stations. It was just so John Peel was the only, and so people were, and Virgin were signing up reggae artists. So by 75 or whatever, a lot of white student-y kind of people were getting into Bob Marley and all that. But don't forget, reggae was popular in Britain. In the early 70s, there was a period where there was a lot of Jamaican music getting into the charts. Not necessarily getting high, but people becoming familiar. So like Toots and the Maytals would be a good example of that. 54, 46 was my number, Monkey Man. Those tunes were very popular in Britain. You know, in fact, Jamaican music probably sold more in Britain than it did in Jamaica.
So what?
Certainly.
What was it like though when you know? So where would you go? Would you go to like clubs for Jamaican music and dance for reggae?
Well, yeah, but you see there was there's a sort of transition period there that's interesting because I'm into it as a skinhead and we're all listening to it with my mates, and then that disperses really by the early 70s, and probably those same sort of people are now, and like myself, you know, listening to rock music, you know, as well, you know, Nazareth and Led Zeppelin and Cream and all of that's going on. But I'm still got my own maintaining my personal interest. And then you just somehow go towards clubs that are playing it. So you have black friends because of growing up in an area that's multicultural, and you go to their house parties, and then that starts off a whole thing. And then you might have a black girlfriend, and then now you're totally immersed in that culture, and it becomes your everyday music. And every weekend you're going to a party where it's a reggae music. And then I started DJing. So then I'm now playing out at these parties and being the DJ who's putting this music on. And that really, from the mid-70s, becomes my main obsession, you know, for over a decade, forever. And so that's what's going on then. Really.
What was it like, though? Because that sounds mad to me. Like when people talk about the sort of racial tension, you must have found that quite weird. Because was there a lot of white people?
No. There's a lot of white women. You used to get a few white women at these. See, there's different. First of all, there's the house party, which is where it's someone you know from work, and it's a bit more. It's different. People know each other more at a house party.
Yeah.
And then you get a blues party, which is a different thing altogether, which is in a cellar somewhere where it's pitch black and it goes on all night, and you pay 50 pence to get in, and you can smoke weed, and they're playing. It's a Jamaican sound system, which is very heavy, and then you get big town hall type sound system clashes. Let me just explain the sound system in Jamaican music. People never used to go and see bands really. It's only when Ireland Records and Chris Blackwell decide to make Bob Marley and the Wailers attractive to a white rock audience. They turn them into a rock outfit. You didn't listen to reggae by looking at bands. You went to sound systems and you heard reggae on sound systems. And that was the way it was. You rarely...
Was it quite... Was it quite... some of the parties, would it have been quite casual and laid back? Totally. I mean, I know what you're getting at here. I mean, I'm trying to say, was
I intimidated by the situation?
A white skinhead,
I think,
and they're looking at you.
Well, I wasn't a skinhead then, of course. You know that I'm older now. I mean, we're talking about 74 now.
Yeah.
So I'm older, I look different, but I am still white, and I'm possibly on numerous occasions the only white bloke in there. Yeah. But my love of the music was so strong that I didn't even consider those problems. I remember going to places on my own and just turning up and going in there. I remember a bouncer saying, "You sure you want to go in here?"
But
honestly. And I went, "Yeah, what's the problem?" And I maybe was a little naive in that respect.
No, well, I'm not saying this as a threat of violence. I'm saying it's more kind of black people looking at you like, what?
They probably were, but I didn't notice because I was just so obsessed with the music. And then, of course, I'm more become ingrained in that general culture where when I go out, all my friends are black. So it's no one's looking at me and thinking, who's that bloke? Here he's there with his black friends. He's obviously one of those white blokes that has black friends, that sort of stereotype. Now and again, I'd see another white bloke, funnily enough. I used to see him quite often. And we'd nod. We'd have a little nod across the room.
What, like two BMW drivers flashing each other as they drive past?
But of course, if you're DJing somewhere and you're white, that's different because they know the music and that you love the music, so you straight away. But when you go to blues dances and stuff, that can be a little bit different because obviously people don't want you to be the police, for example. If you're white, most people just think you're the police infiltrating somewhere. So that's where you have to go with friends. I mean, you wouldn't want to go on your own anyway. It's a bit boring. But when you're with your little posse, your little gang, and they're black and you're white, then that's all cool. But I do remember when I first used to go to reggae record shops. So that becomes a different thing. That becomes a mid-'70s thing where you're going to specialist reggae shops in Hackney or Notting Hill. And I remember on a couple of occasions before they got to know me, because you go to these places on a weekly basis, they would turn the music down. So the shop would be packed. I'd walk in, they just turn the music down and go, yes, can I help you? As if I've made a mistake, as if I've wandered in. And, sorry, I thought it was the chemist. You know, that used to happen a lot. And then it happened a couple of times, and I thought, well, I got wise to it. And I started going, have you got any Elvis Presley? I used to play them at their own game. But then what happened is people got used to know who I was, and it was all okay. But there's another thing about that I do like to mention, in that I was, even as a young man, aware that these blues parties and parties, they develop because black people didn't have access to mainstream venues, were banned even. People could be banned. They wouldn't allow sound systems to come in and plug in here. And so they just start up their own social, cultural life musically. And I was always aware that there was a sense of privilege. And I don't want to sound pretentious about this or over-liberal, but I was always aware that I could walk out of that blues party back into the mainstream world where white people have the privilege. So I was always, mindful of that. Do you understand what I mean by that?
Yeah. Wow. So you mainly kind of, when you got into music, you were going like more sort of like kind of clubbing. You wouldn't call it clubbing, but raving. You called it raving. You raving this weekend. Where you raving? But so that's how you started getting into music like that. Did you go to see live bands?
Oh well, I did, and I mean that like I gotta tell you this, because I looked this up online the other day. There was a club. There was a circuit. There was like a rock band circuit probably started in the late 60s, but certainly in the early 70s. So I'm 16. So I'm the same age, more or less. And with my girlfriend, who I lived with at that time. And we used to go to a venue in Dagenham called the Roundhouse in Dagenham, East London, bordering on Essex, East London. Yeah. And it was part of the circuit for rock bands. And some of these rock bands did become famous, like Queen, for example, were on that circuit.
Played the Roundhouse Dagenham.
Yeah, Queen played the Roundhouse Dagenham. They did.
Sounds funny now.
Queen, Hawkwind. Have you heard of these bands? These heavy rock, progressive rock. So we used to go there almost every Saturday for a while, and that's very much part of. So I had that running as well, and I think all my working class white mates, that's the music that they were listening to as well in that period. So all my contemporaries that I grew up with, that those sort of bands, that Rory Gallagher, heavy rock, that. So I used to go to those live concerts, but I don't remember the first time I ever saw a live band. I don't have a memory of a first.
Don't you? You don't remember your first ever gig?
No, I don't. I can't.
It sounds like it all blurs into one. You were just
I'm in the mid 60s now as well, so sometimes it's hard to remember. And I did do a lot, if you know what I mean. I did go out a lot of live concerts, and but certainly Hawkwind would be memorable. But I also went in the 70s. Went to see all the big bands like Pink Floyd, the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin at Alexandra Palace. But they all feel a little bit of a blur in a way. I know you're young, and you're doing so much then as well.
Well, that's the difference. You see, you grew up in London, where you can just get on the tube and go see a band. When you live out in the sticks, like me, it was a big event. You don't forget.
Sure.
You could go any weekend. So you had kind of two lives going musically.
Probably had 2 or 3 lives. Probably had several lives going actually, because all of that stuff is still part. And then jazz. Now I'm getting into jazz as well, which you learn from older people. And that's not.
Yeah. How did you have the time for that?
Well, that's all I did really. And then also don't forget, I worked in shops for 15 years, and music is on in shops. So you're at work, also indulging in your musical interests.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know.
But that's different. You were in a like a clothes shop, a designer clothes shop where they have to have cool music on. That's different. I worked in factories where it was just Radio 1, same 4 singles. Robbie Williams, Let Me Entertain You every 8 minutes.
No,
see, that's
you're a
the
lot
difference.
younger than me as well, aren't you? So So I'm trying to see another band that I was into that used to go and see live quite a lot. The Sensational Alex Harvey Band. Have you ever heard of those?
No. Right.
Well, you know, there are people of a certain age will remember all of these bands amazingly. You know, so yeah, I had a lot, and I think so. I can't. There's no live concert from those days that I could pick out and say that's my most memorable live gig. I think more recently, probably, I've got more memorable live gigs. So before I forget that, I think this is in the 90s. So we went to see Richie Havens. I don't know if you know. You probably don't know who he is either. Richie Havens Richie Havens is an American black sort of folk singer, if you like. Folk's probably the wrong word, but he plays the guitar and really he plays the acoustic guitar, but in a very not aggressive is the wrong word, but very muscular, heavy strumming kind of way. And he was the first act on at Woodstock. And I don't know if you've ever seen the Woodstock movie, but he's the first act on. He's having to stay on. I don't know if you've ever done this because the other acts hasn't turned up yet.
Yeah, I watched that documentary about Woodstock. He was the first one.
Yeah.
And then, he was.
So like a black.
He was on for hours.
Yeah, that's the guy. So what happened is we go to see him in the 90s at the Jazz Cafe, and of course if you love Woodstock, it's and he's there. It's almost like you're touching the hem of the garment. It's like you're connected in some way to Woodstock. He's there.
Yeah,
he's doing.
I know what you mean. Yeah,
and we're there, and we're totally entranced. And my girlfriend's, she loves him as well. And then when he finishes, he walks through the audience and comes upstairs. And he's touching people. It's like he's anointing them. Yeah. And my girlfriend's just there holding her hands out as if he's some sort of spiritual guru. But it was so fantastic. And he came over and he held her hand next to him and she was crying. I know this probably sounds incredible to other people, but it was a remarkable experience.
Like he was first on at Woodstock. You're holding his hand. You're basically you're basically bear hugging Jimi Hendrix in that moment.
Exactly. That's exactly what.
I get it.
That's exactly that. So that and another memorable gig, which was again not that long ago in the 2000s, was we went to the O2 to see Ennio Morricone, who makes movie music amongst other things, and he did all the music for all the spaghetti westerns, the Clint Eastwood movies.
Yeah, my dad.
He's responsible for all of that and others. And it was a full orchestra, full choir, him conducting. My girlfriend had just had a knee operation, so she was on crutches, and they upgraded us to this front box. And I would say that's probably the most amazing concert I've ever seen. So moving and overwhelming.
And at the O2.
Yeah, at the O2, yeah.
Where people normally say gigs aren't that good.
I wonder if it's because it's a full orchestra and a full choir. It fills the room. It's something
fills the room, or that's what you need.
Yeah. But I also, actually, I'm lying. I remember, and this is an act. This is a person that I did get a bit obsessed with, and still am a bit. Johnny Winter. I don't know if you know who he is. He's a blues rock guitarist.
No,
an a white albino guy from Texas. He died a little while ago, and he was very big. And I went to see him at Wembley. I can't remember exactly. Wasn't the main stadium, but I remember that concert because I'm a massive fan of Johnny Winter and just seeing him live. And of course, the other musical influence during that time is the Old Grey Whistle Test, which is still accessible, and he's on the Old Grey Whistle Test from the period that I went to see him. So it must have been the visit that he made to London. He made that recording whilst doing the concert. And the Old Grey Whistle Test. Bob Harris, it was a.
Was he the host then?
Yeah. Well, there was a host before Bob Harris, but no, this was a Bob Harris one, I think, and they're all on YouTube. And I would say almost every band probably had their best ever gig on the Old Grey Whistle Test. No one has a bad gig on the Old Grey Whistle Test. They make everyone look so fantastic. And
Why is that?
I don't know, it must be to do with, I mean, Bob Marley and the Wailers, who I'd listened to, like I said, via record. But even in their band format, when you're seeing them play live, they look absolutely, it's like he's otherworldly, Bob Marley. When you watch Bob Marley and the Wailers on the Old Grey Whistle Test, you think, wow, this is just incredible. And everyone just seems to look good. And it must be, I've got a feeling that part of it probably is the technology the BBC had, the reproductive technology. But I wonder if the BBC still had a certain clout and reputation in the 70s that bands wanted to do their best work for the BBC.
Yeah, maybe. They thought, better nail this. Well, it's going to be, if it's on the BBC, everyone's going to see it.
In the world almost. And so I've got a feeling, and if you do that, even randomly, look at the Old Grey Whistle Test and look at bands, you think, wow, Bob Marley looks possessed. You think, wow, who is this guy? Where is this coming from? It's just incredible. And equally, Johnny Winter's stint on the Old Grey Whistle Test, where he plays a Rolling Stones song, Jumping Jack Flash, is just it's phenomenal. Yeah. So the Old Grey Whistle Test and the John Peel Show, very much conduits.
Yeah, the Old Grey Whistle Test was like the musicians live at the Apollo.
Yeah.
But John
Still
Peel,
couldn't get on there.
Yeah.
John Peel
got the right agent to get on Grey Whistle Test.
Yeah.
So you're still going to gigs loads now, then?
Well, I'm still going to gigs. Well, no. I don't really go to gigs so much, but I certainly play music a lot. And I've only just finished. I had a few weeks residency on Conscious FM, which is a reggae radio station. I was doing that every Thursday night for a while. As you know, I had to cancel a gig, one of your gigs. So that was great because that was me getting back into music I hadn't, been listening to for a while, and that was a fantastic thing to do. So I think I don't really go to gigs so much, but I certainly listen to music constantly. I would say, well, not constantly, but a lot. There's always records playing, CDs playing, the radio playing. In the car, always music. So I'll have music in every room going on at some point. In the bathroom, I have to have music.
The Find.
The Find.
Record. What are you going to do with that? I don't think hundreds.
I don't think. Yeah, hundreds. They're not. Records that you think are worth money are not usually worth money because so many were made. People say, "Oh, I've got a Beatles record." You think, "Yeah, but so have 10 million other people." It's not. So no, I will clean them up and just keep them as a historical record of that period of growing up. And it's funny when I could even do. It would be a great radio show.
That's what I was thinking. You should do a radio show
playing off that selection, but I'd have to do it on SoundCloud or something like that and put it out. But then, so that's the Find.
Yeah, you should. So you say there's hundreds. You could go through.
Yeah.
Are they in? You said they're kind of in an order.
Well, no. I conceptualised them in an order because I was looking at them and it reminded me of the early 60s and what would have been going on in my house then, what my mum was listening to. Because my mum's only 20 years older than me, so I remember being a child and my mum being young, if you know what I mean, and listening to music. So that's an early memory of music, really. My mum being, 30, me being 10, and all that going on, or me being younger than 10. And I think even younger than 10, people are understanding music, and certainly I was. Maybe that's something I've always been quite advanced in. I'm not advanced in anything else, so I don't mind saying that. But maybe I've got some, but I think you'll find that many people can trace back their musical memory to 10 or even before. Certainly my son's like that now. He was responding to music and making choices when he was very young, being in a musical house, I suppose, being in a house where there's music playing all the time.
You started stand-up a bit later. How old were you when you started stand-up?
I was 40. Well, I did my workshop when I was 40.
Yeah.
And then, 40, 41, but around that time, yeah. So that's very late, isn't it? Very late.
Yeah, that's how old I am now.
Yeah.
Jesus.
That's so amazing.
I can't imagine starting stand-up now. Well,
I
it's
think
going to
also
feel like starting.
It's become very young, isn't it? It's become, the media have made it very young. So people on TV are young, and people who get commissioned programs are young, and audiences are getting younger. And so I think it would be highly unlikely for someone of 41 to break into stand-up comedy now, be allowed even to, or be recognised.
Yeah.
Do you know? So, yeah, that's when I did that, for sure, yes.
So when you started, because when you start stand-up, I don't know if you agree with this, because you spend a lot of time either driving to gigs with music on, or on the tube or train with your headphones in, and you have music. I had music on a lot on the way to gigs to give me some kind of confidence boost, blaring in your ears, something upbeat.
No, I've never done that. I've never done
Didn't
that.
you?
No. I've never. I understand what you're saying, but I don't recognise that. I think just always had music playing anyway. I don't remember using it in that. Maybe I've always had misplaced confidence.
That's brilliant.
Maybe I've had high self-esteem issues for many years.
Yeah. Most of us have music just to give you a bit of a confidence boost. You had to bring it down in some ways. Well, I better put something mellow on. I'm going to go overconfident again.
Yeah, no, I never really.
You had to put something on introspective to try and bring it down a bit.
You're going to have to edit that question out. It's not relevant.
No, that's staying in now.
I think when you're younger, I think when you're older, you have more confidence as well, probably.
Yeah, you kind of know you are a bit more at 41, don't you?
Certainly.
Well, I'll say that. But have you got into anything more lately? Is there any music that you've got into lately? Because there's so much that you got into young. There's not a lot of room left, really, but you're still getting into stuff.
Well, yeah, definitely. I think jazz is probably... There is so much jazz that's been made that it's taking years to penetrate that and hear all that. But I think with jazz, sort of post 50s jazz, 60s jazz, hard bop, or even, from bebop up, modern, what they call modern jazz, I suppose, and certainly electric jazz, what they call fusion. I think that's something that I've explored more and more as I've got older. But there was a band that I came across by accident that I would never have considered listening to, and I got turned on to them by somebody else. There's a comedian, Pierre Hollins.
Oh, Pierre, yeah.
He's into music, and he would often give me an odd CD that he'd copied up and go, "Yeah, check that out," which is I suppose a similar experience to what we were talking about in being in people's houses and sitting around. And he introduced me.
He's a music putter.
Yeah, he introduced me to a band called Richmond Fontaine, who are within a genre called Americana. So so they sound. You can hear the influences. You can hear Dylan. You can hear Neil Young. You can hear the boss Bruce Springsteen in them. But I just became captivated by their music. I'd never heard anything like it before, because you can't be hearing everything all at the same time. You're on different scenes, you're in different genres, things pass you by. And although I love Neil Young and Dylan and all that, I'd never really heard these modern versions of this sort of music, and I loved them so much. And he gave me in the end, I got about 5 CDs. I even went out and started buying their CDs. And so that's a band. I would say they're almost my favourite band now.
Really?
Yeah. How
long ago was this?
Now, this
How long ago, roughly?
Maybe 10 years ago, I think.
Right.
It's hard. I'm terrible with dates and times.
Yeah, but
it was
roughly 10
years ago, and they've become totally a part of my life. I know all the words to all their songs and all of that. And funnily enough, they split up just as I was getting into them.
I do that all the time. I remember getting into Nirvana as a teenager, just after, and then found out he'd killed himself. I was like,
dear.
Well, there won't be any new stuff then, will there?
Yeah.
Isn't that the best though, when you get into a band kind of by accident? And I bet when Pierre gave you that, so listen to this, you kind of went, yeah.
Well, I did a bit because
might
Pierre's got a Pierre. Although we might meet on some things, we don't on others. So he has also given me a CDs where I thought, nah, I don't really fancy that, or that's not for me. And I'd phone him up and I'd talk about it and say why I didn't like it or why I liked it. But with Richmond Fontaine, immediately, I remember coming back from the gig. I remember the gig he gave me. It was in Kent. We came back and I put it on in the car and I thought, this is fantastic. Phoned him up straight away. And that started a whole love affair with Richmond Fontaine. But while I remember, or while we've still got time, the Neil Young, this childish thing about, really, it's childish about if someone doesn't like someone you like, then you can't be friends with them. You know that? I mean, I'm sure that's not just me. I'm sure that's not just me.
You've done the brilliant thing on stage for a while that I liked about deal breakers generally in life, but that
yes,
if someone
well, one of them was actually started off with I wanted to learn to play the ukulele. I thought it might be fun to learn to play the ukulele and add it to my comedy act. I know a lot of people don't like the ukulele, but I felt that I thought it would work for me, being big, ukulele small. Yeah, having
doesn't suit you at all.
No, that's exactly
immediately funny, yeah.
And also, I like to think, maybe pretentiously, that I'm in a musical tradition with my working class comedy. And I thought, that'd be great, to have a little song, like a little musical style song. So I joined a ukulele club. But it was for the over 50s, right?
They must have pissed themselves when you walked in.
Well, I turned up. I mean, I was over 50.
Yeah, but still.
People that were well over 50. And I think one or two of them were like GP referral people that had gone there for therapy.
They've gone and learned to play that for circulation issues.
Yeah, just for mental. Yeah, it was great, but there were some hopeless people there as well. And it was very strange. They had tea and biscuits in the interval. And so I thought if I could learn to play a few chords here, then I could adapt those to a comedy song I could write, and then that would work on stage. But what happened is I went there for a couple of weeks, learned a few chords, and then I found how I could do it as a reggae thing, how I could strum these chords. A bit like Richie Havens in this big muscular way, this heavy strumming, and get a reggae beat where I actually bang on the ukulele as well to get
reggae ukulele.
Yeah, and they were terribly impressed and thought that I'd gone, become sort of superhuman at the ukulele, and it wasn't, because I still can't do individual notes and all that complex stuff. It was really a strumming thing. But in the end, I never quite did it. I tried it, and I probably just can't do musical instruments. I just haven't got the application or the discipline to do that. But anyway, I went to one of the people that was teaching ukulele. I remember going to her house. She was having a Christmas party, and some uke people were coming around. And she was a bit of a hippie, younger than me, a lot younger than me, but like a hippie type woman and a bit bohemian. And she had these ukuleles and guitars on her wall. And I got one of the ukuleles. It was a really expensive one. And I started strumming it. It sounded fantastic. And it occurred to me that a couple of the chords I played sounded a bit like Neil Young chords. And I thought, whoa, he's like Neil Young chords. And she went, who? And I thought, what do you mean, who? I thought, no, almost already then I was prepared to jettison this woman from my life for just not knowing who Neil Young was, right?
Yeah.
That was going to be enough. I thought, no. Well, I think I was amazed because she was a bit hippie-ish. And I thought, no, Jeff, you're older now. Let it go. Be a bit more understanding. So I said, I'll tell you what. I'll send you some clips of Neil Young and you can become familiar with him, which I thought was a much older thing to do, a much more mature thing.
That was very, for you, for me, well, that was very mature.
However, it made it worse because I sent her some clips and then she sent me back going, oh, thank you, very easy on the ear.
Oof.
And I thought, easy on the ear. That's
Neil
all
Young.
you can come up with from one of the most prolific leading singer-songwriters of the 20th century. Only Dylan is in front of him. Only Dylan. He only comes second to Dylan, and you want to call him easy on the ear. And then I started thinking about songs like Needle and the Damage Done, about heroin addiction, and Southern Man, which is about racism in the southern states and the Ku Klux Klan. And I thought, you want to call it easy on the ear?
Yeah.
And I thought, you don't know this, but we're never going to speak again. And that's what happened. I never spoke to that woman from that moment. I thought, I'm not going to pursue this if this is what you're saying and thinking. I do think that's funny, though. But I'm also like that with Hendrix. Because Hendrix is also one of the individual people that I really became obsessed with quite early on as a teenager. And if someone, the worst thing, and I'm not going to say who this is, there was another comedian. He said to me, nah, I don't rate him.
I don't rate him.
Yeah.
The language of it, I don't rate him.
He's not even a good guitarist, you know. And,
in my rating system, he scores low, does Jimmy?
That's never been a debate, the rating of how good I mean, so people who do that, and there's another one that I really don't like, is when people say, nah, I don't like reggae. That, to me, and it sounds racist, because I'm thinking, well, what you mean? All right, fair enough, if you don't like some heavy-duty dub or some roots and culture DJ that's chatting certain lyrics that you can't get your head round or it's too Jamaican, but there's also John Hope crooning, you know, Touch Me in the Morning, the Supreme song. It's so not, you so cannot dislike it. So for people to have this blanket, no, don't like reggae, those people, I don't even bother carrying on the conversation anymore.
The people who blanket don't like the whole of reggae.
Yeah, you get people like that. You get people who say that about jazz, don't you? Don't like jazz. And you think, well, come on, I know maybe you're thinking about progressive jazz or freeform jazz, but, you know, Frank Sinatra and the Count Basie Band, that's jazz. You telling me you don't like that? You know, fly me to the moon. You don't like that? So I come down on
don't rate it.
If you don't rate that, that's the end of this conversation. So I'm a little bit childish like that, but I enjoy that. Because I don't need to. When you're younger, you want to have that argument, don't you? You go, no, listen to this. You've got to like it. Listen to this. I'm not interested in converting people anymore.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. When you're younger, you'd go. Yeah. I remember having a full-on argument with someone about the Beatles. Mm-hmm. Full-on argument. But now, you get to an age where it's like, what? You don't. Yeah. Right. You don't like Jimi Hendrix. Yeah. Okay. Well,
fair enough.
Well, I've got things to do.
Yes.
let's not prolong this any longer. I'm not going to waste my time. Is there a band now that you can think of that it's never happened yet, but if someone said that, don't really like them, then that would be it?
No, I don't think there is. I don't really know modern bands now. Well, I don't know.
What are they called again? Who Pierre got?
Richmond Fontaine. Fontaine.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I probably would.
So you're having a chat with someone now.
And they
and you bring that up, and they go, "Oh, yeah, I've heard some of that."
And they went, "What? I've heard
person."
Well, if somebody said, "I don't like Richmond Fontaine," or "They're rubbish," or something like that, yeah, I probably would. I'd go.
You cut that person out of your life.
Well, I would, completely. I would do that. That's true. I would do that.
Good.
So you're right.
I respect you for that.
It's a bit childish, though, isn't it? But I don't care.
Absolutely justified. I think more people should do it. It's a good barometer of a personality. Well, no, Neil Young, nothing. All right.
But I think what happens is you get older, you're running out of time, and you think, I haven't actually got time to interact with people that are taking these opposite views. I can't fit you in anymore. I haven't got time for that argument.
At this point in their life, if they don't like Bob Marley, then I haven't got time to sort them out.
Yeah,
that's completely fair.
Yeah.
Jeff,
good? Is that a good place to end it on?
Absolute joy talking to you. But I knew you knew a bit about music.
If people don't like this podcast, that's the same. Goes the same, yeah? People
Absolutely.
go, don't like.
Already had to let a few go.
They've got to go as well. So people like Matthew, they go, he's got to go. He's got to go. You know, when they decide they've got to whack someone.
Yeah.
I think he's got to go. He's got to go.
Yeah.
The guy's got to go.
I knew you knew a bit about music. I didn't know.
It's my life. It was my life, really, before comedy. That was my life. And still is. But comedy has a way of becoming all-consuming, doesn't it? And I have to say, during the first lockdown, I got back into my music again, and hence the radio show. So not doing comedy has allowed me to get back into my vinyl. I've got thousands of records, and so it allowed me to get back into that. And I'm thankful in that sense that the first lockdown. I'm sure I'm not the only person who's got back into things that have been sidelined because of work or their careers or whatever. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And you had the find.
yeah, the find. I've still got to go through it more meticulously and clean them up, and I've only had a general look. But there's some great, there's Tom Jones, there's Ella Fitzgerald, there's Helen Shapiro, who was a 14-year-old East End Jewish girl that had the most amazing voice, this freaky voice. Walking Back to Happiness was her big tune. There are comedy records like Ernie, the Fastest Milkman in the World, Charlie Drake, or We Love You Beatles by Dora Bryan. It's in itself.
Treasure trove.
It is.
Unbelievable.
Might be a nice, I don't know, certainly would be a great radio program. I know that.
Definitely.
I know. I might make it up as a Mixcloud thing then, because you can't actually do podcasts with music because of rights. Yeah. But I think you could put a Mixcloud thing up. It's a lovely little journey. Certainly a journey through the 60s, that is. Andrew, a real privilege. And, of course, love talking about music. Who doesn't like talking about music?
Yeah.
If anyone's got any questions about, after listening to this, they're welcome to contact me on Facebook if they want to talk about music more. Okay.
We do a Spotify playlist that goes along with the episode.
That's such a cool idea, putting a playlist next to the interview. That's really clever. I like that.
I know.
We could also put a couple on from The Find, can't we?
Yeah.
Make it all The Find. But certainly we can get Richmond Fontaine in there, Johnny Winter, Lee Perry. Well, I'll look forward to that project then, doing that for you.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff.
A podcast from producer Paul.co.uk.